Mm.
All right, welcome back, witches, to episode 2 of the Witchin Sisters podcast, where we talk everything about what it means to be a witch and what it means to be in the like a witch in this world today and living unapologetically and powerfully. I'm Shannon, and this is Shalon, and today we're gonna kind of touch on talking about shadow work and our shadow self as well and what that looks like and how you can start that process and that healing journey if you're interested. Um, Today, Shalon, she's going to call in some dark goddesses for us. So let's get started.
So we're just going to take a minute before we start our discussion and call in our support from the dark goddesses, creating a sacred space for us to share and be open, calling in dark goddess. Kali is coming in to support us right now, as well as Persephone. I also have Lilith coming through
Mm,
and Rhiannon. She's been coming through a lot right now as well. So just having them come in and support us and being open to receiving the messages, being open to the experience, and asking for them to direct us whatever way we need today in order to share with all you beautiful, lovely souls. So thank
beautiful.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Shalon. That was great. So this is fun. This is interesting. We're have a little bit more of a deeper conversation today for us to talk
Mm.
about, for sure. But do we really want to start by just mentioning that we both dressed exactly pretty much the same today?
We literally showed up
Like,
and we're like, we are twinning. That's like how in tune we are with one another.
so unplanned. I had no idea that we were both going to show up in all black and even like down to the
Yeah,
choker and even
right.
our
Bracelets.
bracelets.
Yeah, I love it.
So funny, but that's how attuned we are. We live nowhere near each other. Like we're so far away from each other. You live in Saskatchewan and I live in Alberta, but
Yeah.
we are so attuned and so connected, even in that distance, that we
Hmm.
twinned out today, which is
All
I
time
think
and
hilarious.
space, right?
We just couldn't start the podcast without
No, we had to
mentioning that
share.
for those of you that are watching on YouTube, anyways, that can see like what we're wearing, and if you're not watching on YouTube, you definitely should go check us out. But yeah, I think it's pretty funny that we kind of
Hmm.
matchy matchy.
Matchy, matchy. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we are deep diving into shadow work. And I feel like lots of people are scared of shadow work, honestly, and don't really understand shadow work as well. They think that it's like all this like um, dark, heavy stuff, right? And in reality, it's not. It's just about, um, diving into, how do I want to put it? Like, the parts of ourselves that we keep hidden for fear of what other people are going to think, and shining a light
Hmm.
on them, actually bringing them to the light so that other people can see those parts of ourselves, because they don't necessarily have to be, um, you know, we always label things bad or good, right? Like it's just a part of
Right.
us,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Hmm.
And you
Yeah,
and I
there's
have
still
been,
parts of ourselves that actually like we hold back. Like you said, people always assume that it's about the negative, but sometimes there's good parts of yourself that you withhold and you don't really share as well because you know, you're feeling you might be judged by others. So
Mhm.
that's also a misconception that it's always about the negative things that you don't like about yourself.
Mhm. Well, that's just, and the things that you don't like about yourself are usually things that other people have labeled as like bad or negative or whatever else. And so you're almost like ashamed of them, or your fear of being judged, or like you think that there's something wrong with you when in reality, like there isn't, right? It's just something that you've been led to believe.
Yeah, and the
And
shadow work is digging into finding the root of that belief. Where did
yeah.
that belief start, even? But we'll get
Hmm.
into that a little bit more with
Hmm.
some of those little questions about like how to dig a little deeper.
Yes, absolutely. So, um, what else did you want to talk about?
Well, for me, like I feel like with my clients, because I'm a Reiki master and teacher as well, and so I do a lot of work with women all the time. And I find that which is why we kind of started this podcast. I find a lot more women are becoming more in touch with their witchy sides, and they're wanting to step into that more. And a lot of times I suggest doing shadow work, and I mean they get a little bit like uptight about that because some people don't want to dig up the past or like have things like that they're just like, I don't know if I want to go there. Like I feel like I've dealt with that. So it's a matter of like finding, I think, too, where you want to begin, right? And some people don't even actually know where to begin, I think, is a lot of it too. It's like, where do you start? How do you start? And for me, like, I think often it's a matter of finding moments in yourself where, say, like you're judging someone else, right? We talk about this all
Yeah,
the time about like if you find yourself judging another woman about how she looks or what she's doing or how she's living her life, that's literally a moment where you can reflect on yourself because it's probably something within you that
absolutely.
it's triggering, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of times you can pull from these triggered moments, these moments where you feel triggered or you're judging somebody else, like, wow, she's dressed like this, or she did that, or carries herself this way. And it's like, why? Right? So it's a moment of taking that and reflecting it back onto yourself, right? So that's a great place to start sometimes is when you catch yourself judging someone else for how they choose to live, show up, um, and express themselves and kind of reflect it back to yourself.
Absolutely. It's very vulnerable. Like, and I think lots of people like are like being vulnerable is super uncomfortable, right? And when you're like exploring those inner aspects of yourself that you've like basically pushed aside because you didn't want to deal with them because they were like, maybe too emotional or too painful or whatever. Like when you dive down and start addressing those, like it can be a bit of a roller coaster and a little like I said, uncomfortable. And lots of people don't want to go there. They want to like keep this mask on that they've been, sharing with the world. And in reality, like that's not even really who they are. Right. Like lots of my clients,
Hmm.
like we deal with like limiting beliefs that have like come from our parents, society, all of that kind of stuff. And we deal with like childhood wounding, and I do a lot with like healing the inner child and stuff. And like I said, I do a lot of work with like the dark goddesses
Yeah,
because the dark goddesses get a bad rap, right? People
right.
think that
Yeah,
they're like the villains and that they're like evil and that they're all of this stuff. And really, they're not. They're the ones that are in the trenches with us, helping us bring out all of these shadows and helping and support us so that we can bring these things to light and transmute them, um, and shift and change things within us and just like, you know, be able to comfortably show up as our authentic selves, right?
absolutely. And I think what you're saying too, when you say doing like childhood wounds, inner child stuff like that, it goes hand in hand with shadow work. Like
Yeah. Yep.
they're one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, my biggest thing was I was working with a mother wound, right? And a sister wound that I had. And my sister wound wasn't just about my sister. I don't know if a lot of people understand what sister wound would be, but it was like sisterhood, like healing my relationship with other women. And that came from my mother wound, right? And so that's where I started my journey, right? With doing some shadow work myself, was really working with my mother wound and my own inner child. And that was an ugly it was an ugly process at times, but it was also very beautiful because I learned so much about myself. And I also ended up finding more compassion for my own mother and her own experience as well. So it went further back, to also healing a little bit of that ancestral wound
Yeah.
healing, because this woman wound, this mother wound that I had, my mother had, and my grandmother had. And so this is like a lineage thing that I ended up, realizing that needed a lot of work, and it's still something I work on today. And just so you know, like shadow work is something that you do for a long time. It's not just like a little process that you do for like a month or two or a year. It's like something that you're
It's
constantly
ongoing.
conscious of and
Yeah.
ongoing, and you're working with it
Hmm.
all the time.
Hmm.
And you'll always find like little tidbits. So that's why it's super important to pay attention to what's going on around you, and sometimes and like find those moments to go back and reflect on why you believe that in the first place. Like you were saying about limiting beliefs. Like again, that's another form of shadow work, right?
Yeah.
Because where did that belief system come from? So when you go a little bit further into your inner child, or I like to go to my inner teen, I think too. Like that one's not really talked about enough, but that's like where a lot of my stuff is formed, you know, whereas a child I was a little more free, whereas as a teenager, that's when you start actually embodying all the things that you that have been impressed on you as a child.
Hmm.
And then you start acting those things out. So you do start
Hmm.
suppressing things where it's like, oh, she's so talkative, you talk too much, you're too emotional, like all of those things that you were told as a young person. And then you start to tighten up and stop behaving that way, usually as a teenager. So a lot of times that gets unspoken as well when doing shadow work, going back to that young adolescent self as well. And you know, why that you started to, like I said, withhold and contract and like behaving in a certain way and starting to hide parts of yourself. Not only is it puberty and like all of that kind of stuff, but it's also all of the things that were impressed on you as a child that
Yeah.
are now like sunk into your mind and turned into those beliefs, those inner beliefs and the inner narratives, right?
So I love the fact that you brought up our inner teenager, because I feel like once you are like kind of done a lot of childhood healing and clearing and whatever else, like our or our inner teenager comes up and they're angry.
Right.
Like
They
they're
are.
angry about a lot of stuff. And I think like as I was listening to you talk and everything, and I was like, because and we talk about like teenagers rebelling and stuff, because I think they're rebelling
Mm-hmm.
against things that they don't believe in these things. They don't believe in these like
Mm-hmm.
limiting beliefs that you're trying to pass down to them. And so there's like this inner turmoil, and I think at some point they just like they either like, you know, completely step away from, you know, like if we're talking about actual teenagers, they completely step away from their family or whatever else, or they just like, you know,
Absolutely.
comply and whatever else, right? And so that's where that like the what is the like the conflict comes in between, like the parent and
Mm-hmm.
the teenager dynamic or whatever, right? Because they're trying to like
Right.
enforce these limiting beliefs onto onto teenagers, and they just like they don't get it. Like
Well, because you're also as a young person, you're searching for your own identity as well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's where like you were saying about the pushback, because it's like
yeah.
you want to be somewhat you know, like taking that advisory from people that you're supposed to love and trust, right? Like your
Hmm.
parents or your guardians
And
in
respect
many
and everything else.
and your
Yeah,
family and things like that, and you're learning those values. But you're also, like you said, with the conflict, because you're just like, I'm not sure this is me. Like,
yeah,
this is who I am. And so you also are in an experimental phase, which can lead to some interesting situations and interesting decisions as well. You can put yourself in, you know, maybe situations that you wouldn't today, but as a teenager, you're a little more free still from that childlike mentality that you have, because you're in between, you're in this in between of transition phase, right?
yeah.
And so a lot of times you push against what you've been taught and you rebel. A lot of teenagers rebel, or some of them comply and they are take that safe path, and they never get
Hmm.
to experience things. So it goes both ways, right? Where you
Well,
choose
and
to either rebel against what you've learned, or you choose to completely go with it and follow what your parents want for you and who they want you to be and the classes they want you to take and how you should carry yourself and behave and all of that kind of stuff too, to the point where when you become an adult you actually are like, who am I? Because I listened to what everybody else said and I
yeah.
never really developed my own personal inner self
Hmm.
as well. which
Yeah.
can cause a lot of turmoil again once you're, become a young adult and you realize you're like, I've never done anything for myself. I've never followed my own inner compass, I guess you could
Hmm.
say, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I
So
feel
it can
like when
go
you
both
start
ways.
when you start doing like shadow work, it's like opening up like Pandora's box and like piecing through all these
Hmm.
pieces of yourself
Yeah.
and figuring out is like, is this mine? Is this not mine? Do I want to keep this? Do I not want to keep this? Does this actually resonate with me? Does it,
Yeah,
or
totally.
doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? And so then it's like really rediscovering who you are to the core is what it is, right? And also like bringing those pieces of yourself that you've kept hidden for other to show other people, and that is like, well, like we said, it's uncomfortable.
Well,
And some
and
people
like,
don't want to do
yeah,
it.
and when you're talking about like our younger self, I think a lot of stuff comes out as your teenager, like I was saying just a little bit earlier here, is that you start to hide even the good stuff. Like
Yeah,
I
to
think
fit in.
too, to fit in, right? And so it's just like, oh, well,
Hmm.
you want to be this loving, compassionate kind of person, but it's just like, oh, they're gonna think I'm weird, they're gonna think this, and you worry about what other people think. So even if it's not always a negative part about yourself that you don't like, it's also the stuff about yourself that you think like, oh, that's a little cringe, as the kids would say. Sorry, I'm old, but yes, cringe. The things that would be like, cringy to be as a young person, you know, like, and that it wouldn't be as accepted by like young people nowadays or during whatever period when you were a teenager, really, like every generation goes through that. So you hide the good stuff too,
Absolutely.
and then you never develop that part of yourself because you let it just like sink away into the background.
Well, and when you were talking about like teenagers that just end up complying, like they turn out to be adults who are people pleasing and who are sacrificing themselves for
Yeah.
everybody around them all the time and don't really know
Hmm.
who they are and don't really know where they're going with their life. And they just like, get on this like hamster wheel almost. And um yeah, it ends up being just like I was just dealing with a client the other day and she was just like beside herself because like she really believes that she could not ask for help, and she was just like, we had to like dive into where that came from, and we
Hmm.
dove down into her childhood, and it came from so many things. Do you know what I mean? But it
Right.
was literally causing her so much stress, so much anxiety and everything else. And when we are able to like clear that and like bring this shadow aspect of their self, right, to the light and like transmute it, that's when things are able to shift, right? And then you start
Hmm.
like this new, like, I don't know, I want to say like cycle or trajectory or whatever, where you can actually just like change the way you've been showing up and your beliefs and everything else.
Absolutely. And you sometimes when you're doing that process, like you don't even really notice the changes at first until you really get a little bit further down the path and you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I've worked through so much of that already. And like you're never done working through stuff, but at the same time, like you can see over time just how far you've come. Um,
Absolutely.
when you really dig into the work, because again, it's not just one random meditation where you're like, oh, I'm going to do some inner child work. And it's like you do some guided meditation or, choose um, something off of online that gives you some little tidbits of information and you just process that, do a little bit of journaling and you're done. This is like an everyday thing because it's a belief, it's an inner belief that you have that you know, you're hiding away. So you're not even consciously realizing that it's not coming up every single day because you're not paying attention to it, right? So it's also like bringing yourself to an awareness and a constant awareness of what is going on around you and within you so that you can be reflecting on it as it comes through, right? Like I was saying about just being able to like if you find yourself judging another mom or a friend of yours and some of the choices that she makes. A lot of times that's something from within you that you find difficult, right? That you's like,
Hmm.
maybe it is me. Maybe I don't realize, but I always, you know, judge myself being like, you can't dress like that, or you can't just, let your kids scream like that, like whatever the judgments might be. And like where that, so that you can really start reflecting on that. And that's where the questions and the journaling comes in. Yes, you can find prompts like anywhere online. There's lots of information out there about how to start shadow work. But I always encourage people to do it this way because it's a lot easier to, or I mean, it's a lot more um, meaningful, I think, when you allow your intuition to guide you in the direction of self-discovery.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big things that we need to release in order to do that is our own self judgment as well. When we're diving into those aspects of ourselves, then we start like
Hmm.
judging ourselves for like, well, how could you believe that? Or why would you believe that? Or do you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
that's something that is really hard when I have my, like when I do my circles and everything, and I have the women like writing out the things that they're like wanting to release or address or whatever else, then I literally tell them judgment free, right? You need to release um, whatever is coming up and just flow through it because it's coming out for a reason, basically.
And I always say self-compassion too.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
give your and grace. Like give yourself grace, so if you're something coming up, it's like allow yourself to just be that it's okay to feel how you feel. Like there's nothing wrong with, being ashamed because also a lot of shadow work comes through um in shame, right? And can bring shame for the belief system that you carry and or how you feel about yourself or even guilt, like feeling guilty that you would, you know, feel that way about somebody else, right? Then you
Yeah.
feel guilty and ashamed for feeling that
Yeah.
way about someone because it could be about a stranger, but it could also be about someone that you really care about. It could be, like you said, about yourself as well. A lot of people don't know too. Like, I think it's is it Carl Jung? He actually came out with a book about um, doing like the shadow self and working with your shadow self and doing
Yeah.
shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think he's one of the first people to really bring that to the collective. And so his um, one of his quotes I have here says, um, like to quote him, he says, "The shadow is the person that we'd rather not be,"
Mm. Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
that's a judgment, right? And that's a criticism, a self-criticism. And so it's about breaking that down, right? And the shadow is the part of us and our personality with which we don't consciously show others, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
don't even realize sometimes that we're, like I said earlier, hiding those parts of ourselves at all.
Well,
And so
it's
bringing yourself into awareness is how you can really start to make that change and that shift.
yeah, and like it's basically you're rejecting yourself is what you're doing.
Right. Rejecting parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
That
you
actually
feel that
need
were not acceptable or accepted
exactly. You've been led to
in
believe.
society,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in groups or
Yep.
even just like an individual or family like situation. And
Yep.
so it's like, this is not acceptable behavior. This is not an acceptable way to be a lady, a woman,
Mm-hmm.
especially because we are here with the ladies in our sisterhood, our collective here. But especially for women, I think is very powerful. There are a lot of pressures that are put on us and a lot of beliefs that are just
Mm-hmm.
not serving us at all,
Yeah.
and especially for older generations as well. Young generation too, there's a lot, it's maybe a little bit different now with the society that we live in with, the online stuff and social media and the pressure that comes with that. But as, generations before us, like our mothers and our mothers' mothers, like the stuff that they had to go through as well, it's like brought a lot of shame for them. So when I have clients too coming through, it's like there's a lot of beliefs that they carried their whole life. Like for one, it would be you graduate high school, you
Yeah.
find a husband, you
Yeah.
have a mom, you
Yeah.
become a mom, you get a house, you work, you stay home and take care of
Hmm.
the kids. And like that's
Hmm.
what they did. And then they find themselves being coming in to see me at 60 years old and they're about to retire and they don't know themselves.
No.
They don't know anything because they
Yeah.
were never taught to self-reflect or look at their own life and fulfill their own needs and or ask to have their needs fulfilled as well by others and to show up for themselves and not just showing up for others as well, right? Because
Well,
that's not
and
what she
that's
did. That wasn't very ladylike and that wasn't
yes. Well,
motherly or like all of those different judgments.
hmm, and that's where like the people pleasing and the sacrificing comes in as well, right? Like my needs
Yes,
don't matter,
self-sacrifice for
right?
sure. Oh
And
my
like
gosh.
not being able to ask for help and all of that kind of stuff. Like women
Oh
have been
God.
led to believe that we need to overgive, that we need to prove ourselves, that we need to show our worth, and that we
Yeah.
need to like extend ourselves because we're going to win some sort of trophy from that. Apparently, I don't know. Like I still haven't got one, but
Yeah, where's my medal?
I don't know. I didn't get one. I must have missed the ceremony. But
Because I
seriously,
should have
like
like a whole wall here of trophies and like
I should have a
medal
room by
awards.
now. Just
Yeah, this is my trophy room.
for all the sacrifices I made. No.
All my sacrifices.
Oh, I love that we can laugh about this because honestly, because I get that it can be like a
You
really
have to have
heavy
a sense of
subject.
humor. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? I have like completely lost my train of thought of what I was talking about. Oh,
No,
and I
just
also
like
wanted to
that.
say when we were talking about like the inner child healing and that kind of stuff, like, and you were talking about the mother wound and everything else, it's literally reparenting yourself and giving yourself
Mm-hmm.
the love and compassion and nurturing and care that you required as a child that you did not receive. So when you're having a
Absolutely.
triggering moment, it's like, what do I need in this moment? What did I need as a child that I did not get? That I'm like crying out for right now. And, you give that to yourself, to
Yeah.
give that to yourself, to like ease that inner child and let them know that it's okay and that they're okay and that
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with them, right? Like we always think
Mm-hmm.
there has to be something wrong with us, right? Like I've raised my girls to celebrate their differences and really I think that we should celebrate everybody's uniqueness, right? And that everybody is different for a reason, right? How boring would the world be if we were just all the same, right? If we had
Mm-hmm.
all the same taste and everything, if we had all like, we wouldn't have all of this like amazing music and everything else if we all just like liked the one song, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so
And
I
I
think,
think too, it's celebrating, yeah, your own unique
mhm,
ventures and your own like,
yes.
unique belief systems as well, and not just following the narratives that you've been handed down to you from society, from your family, from even friendships. Like, you do, take a lot from everybody that's in your life, and sometimes you
So
realize like this wasn't mine. Like, where did that, like you had said that earlier, it's like which one was mine and which one was like
yeah,
given to me.
yeah. It's like sorting out through your clothes. What do I like this? Do I want to keep this? Is this still me? Is this not me? Does
Right.
this feel right? Like when
Yeah.
you're cleaning out your closet kind of thing. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing I actually wanted to, that just came to me as we were talking, is addressing the fact that when you start doing shadow work and when you start bringing those aspects of yourself to life, to life, whichever,
Both.
um, both, right? Um, you're going to make other people around you very uncomfortable as well. And you are definitely going to trigger them. And sometimes it's really hard to stand in your own. And sometimes you want to regress and go back to the way you used to be, just so that you can
Yeah.
still fit in with those people, just so that you can still be with those people, right? Because there also
Well,
comes
because you
sometimes
want
a
to be
fear of
accepted.
losing those people. Right. And
Yeah.
sometimes we do. Sometimes we start losing
Abandonment.
friends. Sometimes we start losing
Mm-hmm.
family. And all of that is triggering as well. Right. But then
Mm-hmm.
when we show up as our authentic selves, we meet other beautiful human beings who are authentic in themselves as well. And that is an amazing place to be. That is like just like thinking about me meeting you. And do you know what I
I
mean?
was thinking
Like
the same thing. I'm
we
like,
would
oh
have
my gosh,
never,
if I
right?
wouldn't have started that process and like both of us were in that same space of like, being open to,
Yeah.
like I said, mine was like a sisterhood wound, right? So I was healing that, and to be able to really connect with you, like that was a huge shift for me. And we just
Yeah.
clicked
We
like
did.
that, you know? It's like I've known
Absolutely.
you my whole life, I'm pretty sure. Like, how have we
Hmm.
never met before? I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure
I know.
we've been sisters in every life, so we know that now. But yeah, I was just
Absolutely.
gonna say the same thing. Like when I met you, that was just like a huge thing for me.
Well,
It
because
was
we want to
huge.
create more genuine, like
Yeah,
authentic connections that is like, I always feel quality over quantity, right? If there is a connection
absolutely,
that is
yeah.
like just depleting you, it's not worth it. It's not worth your
Hmm.
time. It's not worth your energy. And you know what? When you start doing the work and you start leveling up and you start doing all of this stuff, those people may just temporarily leave your life, right? They have the choice
Yeah,
that they can start
totally.
doing the same thing and they can still rise to meet you at the place that you're at, right? But I've
Hmm.
come to learn that we don't want to like stop our journey to wait for other people because
No,
they may
that's
never
beautiful.
make
Oh
the
my God, I
choice.
love that.
They may
I
never
love that
make the
so much.
choice, right? And you're just going to be stuck there waiting for them, hoping and wishing that they're going to
And
come to meet
sometimes they
you.
want you to stay as that
Yes,
version of you
that's
that
the
they
other thing.
know. And
Hmm.
that's why the friendship will fall away because
Yeah.
they're comfortable um, with the connection that they have and what they get from you. Because sometimes, like, you're their source of energy as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also, maybe even in a negative way, some people have a little bit of envy. So it's like they would rather
Hmm.
see you stay at this level and then to see you rise,
Yeah.
and their
Yeah.
intentions in that connection sometimes can be because it makes them feel good, like misery loves company sometimes, right?
Yes, it does.
And you'll notice that, and you might not even have realized that ever with a friendship until you really
Nope.
do this self work and this self reflection that, oh, your intention was never to want to see me grow and flourish
Mm-mm.
because it's comfortable for you to have me here next to you and you're comfortable where you are,
Hmm.
right? And so you will outgrow people
Yep.
and they will be like left behind, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they
But
can make the choice, right? They can make the choice if they want to like
hmm
do the
yeah,
work as well and grow and evolve with you, right? But I always say it's not personal, it's vibrational. Do you know what I
right.
mean? Like you can still love that person. You can still love that person and want all the best for them and everything else. But if you're not a vibrational
Absolutely. Oh God,
match,
yeah.
you are literally
Hmm.
lowering yourself to like just to be able to interact with them. And that's hard. Like if you feel like a yo-yo because you're just like up and down, up and down, up and down, right?
Yeah. And it's just hard to like go back. It's like putting on your old clothes
Yeah,
that
that
don't
don't
fit
fit.
anymore.
They're super
And
uncomfortable.
it's like when you're wearing it and you just don't feel good in it anymore. It just
No,
doesn't feel comfortable.
no.
You feel out of place. You're just like, this is
Yep.
just like, you know what I mean? Like when you put on
Yep.
something and it's just not right, it just doesn't fit
Yep.
right. And it might have been your favorite outfit, right?
Could have been.
It's like no
Could have
longer
been.
fits anymore. It doesn't suit your style or it just doesn't feel good. Like you know how your clothes, like they really do make you feel like really good when you feel like you're in the most comfortable um clothes that you have on or whatever. It's kind of that same thing. It's like you just don't fit. It doesn't mesh your nuts. It's just like weird. I don't know what it is. It's just like that. It's not fitting anymore. Not
No.
that they're ugly or bad or whatever. It's just like, okay, that's just not where I'm at anymore. And
No.
it's time to move forward and like try a different style or get some new stuff. Like, and it's difficult to let go of something, I think, that you've known your whole life. And so if you've been friends with somebody, say, for a long time, and it really comes to pass that this person's just not had the greatest intentions for you as you've started to do some of this work, that they no longer align with you, allowing yourself to let that friendship dissipate, like you said, without any judgment of that person. for where they're standing as well,
No,
right? It
absolutely.
doesn't
Yeah.
make them a bad person
No,
either because they're
not
not
at
ready
all.
to take that step with
Hmm.
you.
I
And
agree.
that's why, like you said, being able to still like be like, I love you, I send you like I wish you the best and
Yeah.
have the greatest intentions that they
Yeah.
find their path and their journey. But everybody's on their own journey, as we say all the time. That's very common
Hmm.
in this spiritual space. But like it's so true when it comes to when you do this heavy work and then you start seeing things shift in your life, and these are comfortable things, but having to let people go at the level and stay at the level that they're at as you move forward and leaving them with nothing but love and light and positive intentions that they find their way or whatnot, that doesn't make them a bad person.
No,
Okay? It just
no,
like you always say this. There's no good like there's we like to label things good or bad. But in that
it
situation,
just
I don't
is.
think yeah, you don't
There
want to
is no
have
good
to
or bad.
leave with that because that's
There
not
just is.
helping. That's yeah,
Yeah.
and you're not,
It's just a
you
choice.
know, yeah, you're not leveling up really if you're going to continue to judge someone, are you? You're just that
No,
would be an
not at all.
ego thing,
Exactly.
not so
It's just a
much a
choice.
shadow work thing.
It's it's literally just like you two are making different choices, and that's okay.
Yeah, you're not better or worse, and they're
No,
not better or worse than
absolutely.
anybody.
Absolutely.
We're just
And
a
when you were talking
different.
about a different
No, go ahead.
no, I'm like when you were talking about like connections and friendships and relationships and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. So like what was coming to me was like a reason, a season, and a lifetime, right? People come and go
Right.
all the time in our lives, right? And it's amazing sometimes how quickly when you start actually doing the work and stuff, how people sometimes just disappear out of your life, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what just like how where did that person go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then you see sometimes people that you wouldn't even expect to, like maybe there was some sort of just distance, and then you realize that, oh wow, we have so much in common. Like
yeah,
more in common than I would have expected. Like you're not
yeah.
somebody, sometimes you meet people, you're like, you're not somebody that I would usually hang out with or talk to. And you're just like, wow,
Hmm.
I'm really connecting with this energy because you've shifted and you know, you're able to connect now on a different level too. So that also
Right.
happens when you start seeing people come into your life as well. Not that
And
honestly, when I met you, I was like, this girl, yeah, we're gonna be besties because she just knows, we just have it. We just there's
but isn't
something
that what
about
I'm talking?
her.
Isn't that what I was like when I said it's vibrational, right? And like you and
Yeah,
I are
you just knew
obviously super
instantly.
like aligned and vibrational, like we're dressing the same
So true.
for the same day, same on the podcast. Like, how are we showing up to do shadow work today? Just like this.
Trust is down to the down, like, and who wears chokers these days? And it's so funny that both of us were like,
Oh,
this was
I do.
hilarious.
Like
But yeah,
some days
you're
I
right.
still
We
wear
were
my
right on
choker.
that. Oh yeah. I know, I wear it now. It's like pretty cute. But
So,
um yeah.
are we ready to pull some cards?
Yeah, I
Is
think
there
so.
anything else we wanted to touch on before we start that?
Um well, I did want to like talk a little about just like maybe some of the questions that you can ask yourself
Love
to
it.
step into your shadow work that, you know, just starting that process, like because like I said earlier, there's a lot of times you just don't even know where to start. You don't even know how
Mm-hmm.
to start. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd mentioned, you know, a lot of self-reflection, so catching yourself in the moment. So one thing that is a huge part of doing shadow work is holding yourself accountable.
Yeah.
Self accountability
Yeah.
is huge
Mm-hmm.
because it's easy for us to not acknowledge or even just like put things and compartmentalize things, right? And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of, you know, it's a lot of accountability. You really have to be accountable to yourself and be able to hold yourself to that standard because nobody else is going to do that work for you. So if you're really committed, you really do have to commit to yourself, right? And say, like, no matter how uncomfortable I am, no matter how uneasy I feel, like, I'm going to acknowledge these things that come up as they come. And, you know, make that choice to work through that and not just continue the process of hiding it away and tucking it away in that box in the back of your mind. Like nobody else knows, so it doesn't matter. But it's you know. So we really hold these things back because of others, right? But honestly, it's you're just carrying it around with you. Nobody else, because that's what the truth is. Nobody else knows and is judging you. You're judging yourself and you're
Mm-hmm.
assuming your pre-assumptions that other people are going to judge you for these things, right?
Yeah.
So you're prejudging yourself to protect yourself, right? So you're going to have to let that guard down and stop protecting yourself and allow yourself to feel these uncomfortable things
Mm-hmm.
and really work on them instead of being like, it's not like anybody else really knows, so I could just like not acknowledge it ever and it's fine. If you really want to do the work, you're going to have to hold yourself accountable. So that's like kind
Yeah.
of the first step, right? Did
Yeah.
you agree?
Yes. I also want to say is that when you start doing shadow work and stuff, you need to look at things from an outer perspective. You need to take yourself back and like even be like, if I
Hmm.
was my friend looking at this right now, like what would their observation be? Or do you know what I mean? Because when we're in our own
Yeah.
stuff, it's kind of hard to actually see what that like root aspect is that we actually need to get to the core of and clear. And that's honestly why I think doing shadow work isn't something that you necessarily want to do on your own. Like you're going to
Hmm.
probably want to find somebody to work with. Like, yes, Shannon and I do that. If we don't
Hmm.
resonate with you, that's okay, but find somebody who's going to be able to help you work through it because
Yeah, for
they
sure.
know what questions to ask, they know where to go with things, right? And they also will give you a safe space to be held because sometimes there's some pretty crazy emotions that come up that we don't even realize. And then you're just like, what do I do with this? And you feel a little overwhelmed at times. So,
Well, then, and also, like, if you're the type of person who's like an overthinker, and you just
what?
will process and
I would
ruminate
never
and
do that.
ruminate and ruminate on things, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to move past a certain step, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
When
having
you're
someone's
stuck.
outer perspective to draw you
Yeah.
back again and like continue help you continue on the path, right? And keep you
Mm-hmm.
aligned too.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, you really do have to be self-accountable. That's like number one. Like you
Yeah.
really have to be willing to go to those ugly, dirty places and do the work, right?
Get down
Um,
and dirty.
like one of the questions that I had written down when I was doing mine was, how am I inauthentic and why?
Mm,
Right?
yeah.
So that could be maybe you find yourself talking to a friend and she's expressing herself and excuse me, you don't even tell them what you really think and you never do.
Hmm.
That's not really authentic, is it?
No.
We all have those friends like we don't like the that are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Do you want to be that friend? Like are you that friend? How are you showing up inauthentic? Um, what would you say for something like that? Like, what would be something you think that would be an inauthentic way of showing up?
Well, just basically showing up how you've been expected to show up by the world in general, how your family expects you to show up, how your employer expects you to show up. Do you know what I mean? Um, like
True.
showing up like just to fit in kind of thing, right? That's being inauthentic,
Yeah,
right?
fitting into societal norms as
Yeah,
well. Like, as for me, that was like being a mother. When I became a mom, I felt like I had
right?
to be a certain way to be show up as a mom. Like, moms can't be sexy. Moms can't
Yeah,
dress like this. Moms can't talk like that. And it's like, sorry, but I wear all black. I like to dress, wear makeup in my hair, and I also swear a lot. You know,
exactly. Yes.
it's like, you know,
So that actually like made me think of like when I was in this group that was like here where I live, and there was like this thing going around online when my kids were little. Are you a granola mom or are you an alphagetti mom? And it's like, what?
oh,
So like a granola mom does everything organically and makes her own food and uses cloth diapers and da
right.
da da da. And then the alphagetti mom just like gives her kids alphagetti and like whatever
Mac and
snacks and da
cheese
da da
and
da da, right?
yeah,
And it's like,
watch a
what?
TV.
Why do we have to be one or the
Hmm.
other? why can we not just be like doing what's best for us in our
Mm-hmm.
situation and showing up that way without being judged? I think mothers are judged so horribly sometimes for how they raise their kids, for what they do, like the whole, like all of
Right.
that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like
That's a good point.
you do what is best for you and your family and your household. Period. Doesn't matter what anybody else has to say. They're not living your life. They're not
Right.
like the one who has to wake up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror and be like, you know what? I'm okay with how things are. I'm happy with what I did. I'm happy with, how I showed up today, or I am, or I'm not, or acknowledging that too and
Right.
being like, I freaked out on my child and I kind of got like, my youngest daughter has no problem putting me in my place if I need it. And I appreciate that about her. She'll just be like, Mom. And I'll be like, oh yeah, thank you. Okay. She'll create the awareness for me. But because
Mm-hmm.
I have created that safe place for her and with her to be able to do that. And I've like allowed my kids to do the inner reflection and be like, okay,
Yeah,
you're upset
where a
right
lot of
now. Do you know what
parents
I mean?
don't want their kids to say, have any sort of opinions. Like, don't talk back to me. I'm the parent. I'm the adult in
Yeah.
this situation.
Yes.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah. You respect me.
won't be in a
I'm
place to
your
receive
authority,
their
whatever
child.
else. No,
Yeah.
exactly. And I never wanted my house to be like that. At one point in time it was.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where I was like, this is not it. This is not it. I'm not happy. The kids aren't happy. And I was like, that was when I decided that's when I really started, I think, into my like healing journey and my self-love journey and stuff,
Hmm.
because I was like, I do not want this for my kids.
Yeah, me
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I definitely felt like I let myself slip into the background. I used to say I just want to like fade into the background and like wanted to just be invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me again, sorry. That was not authentic to me because I wasn't like that previously, but I didn't feel like I fit into the cookie cutter what a mom should be at the time. And so I would have rather just faded into the background. And that's also just
Mm-hmm.
not how I'm me. So I felt like that's one time where I was showing up kind of inauthentically.
Yeah.
And my why was because society said this is how things should be, and this is how moms should be, and how they should dress, and how they should talk, and how they should parent, like you were saying, like
Mm-hmm.
the granola mom or the alpha getty mom. And now it's like gentle parenting and not
Yeah.
gentle parenting and things like that. And I lost myself in that. So, I think
Absolutely.
that's a perfect example of how women can sometimes show up inauthentically. Um, Let's see. Let's find one more little question here, and then we'll do some cards. Um, how often do I lie to myself? And what ways am I in
Ooh,
denial?
that's a good one.
Right? And I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that kind of goes in line with being inauthentic, really,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because let's talk about the stories that we tell ourselves, the narratives
Yeah.
that we carry, right?
Yeah.
That's what that means to me, I think, right? How do we lie to ourselves? Like, and try and accommodate these beliefs, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
too, because
Yeah.
we're comfortable. We don't want to let them go because it's taken us this far. Some of us, right? Some of the beliefs that we have aren't, like we said, aren't all negative, right?
No.
But are they serving us?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not really serving us. So it's like we just lie to ourselves. Like it's gotten me this far. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't do that. And that's very valid and true.
Mm-hmm.
But the lie we're telling ourselves is that we need to continue to be that way, to be a good mom, to be a good partner, to be a good friend, to be a good spiritual leader or a guide, or healer. Sorry. You know what I mean?
It's
Like,
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because like what was just like coming to me is like conversations I've had with a couple ladies lately, and they're just like, oh, well, like I was telling my mom, and like that you get backlash from your mom when you start telling her about your life, and she'll start telling you the way you should be living it. And that,
hmm
do you know what I mean? I'm like, stop talking to your mom and telling them because they
Yeah.
have their own beliefs. They have their own beliefs that they have decided to take on, and they keep telling themselves their own lies and living in denial about whatever else. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what
Yeah.
their mom told them, because that's what their mom told them, and whatever. And it's like
Hmm.
when we started out, it was like this whole like ancestral thing that it just keeps getting passed down. And it's like, do I still want to
Right.
buy into that? Do I still want to buy into that? Or do I want to make another choice and really like acknowledge that this isn't working anymore?
Yeah. And even just small things like telling yourself that you're helping somebody, okay? When really
Yep.
that's your own wound of like worthy. It's a kind of a worthy wound, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you always have to show up and help people to feel valuable in their life, that you have to be serving them in some sort of
Mm-hmm.
way to be
Mm-hmm.
of value to them, right? That would be a
Mm-hmm.
lie that you tell yourself, wouldn't
Yep.
it?
Yep.
Because you don't. You don't have to do that, but that's how you've always shown up. So you've always been the helper, or like you said, being a people pleaser, right? That's a lie that we tell ourselves. And you're in denial about it when you think like, well, I'm trying to help people, I'm a good person, and it's not about being good or bad. It's like, do you have to only show up for people and help them through their difficult times to be of value in their life? No, no, you don't.
Yep.
You don't have to fix people to feel valuable
Yeah.
in and to feel worthy of their love.
And they will become dependent on you, and you will
Absolutely. And
spend
then you
all
end up
your
on a
time.
pedestal.
Yep.
Hmm.
You'll spend all your time and energy and everything else having to run around and try and help everyone else. And in the meantime, you have your own stuff that you're trying to deal with as well.
Absolutely. So I invite you
And then it
guys
doesn't get
to,
dealt with.
right, to actually like maybe delve into a couple of these questions yourself if you feel called to. Like, how am I authentic? Or how am I inauthentic and why? And then also, how often do I lie to myself and what ways am I in denial? I think that, you know, is a is a great little, homework for you guys to check out and see kind of, where that might take you because I think we all do both of those things. There's times that everybody shows up in an inauthentic way. So if you feel called, I invite you to take these questions and do maybe a little bit of journaling and maybe even like a little meditation about it. But yeah, I think that's just it's a powerful way to start your journey of
Mm-hmm.
your shadow work and really
Yep.
digging deep because it is
Yep.
gonna be deep. Yeah,
Well, and just start being aware of your triggers. Like instead of reacting, like stop, take a step back, and then evaluate like what is actually going on here. Like where is this reaction really coming from?
absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
Ooh, so you got your cards there? You gonna pull us a
I do.
card?
Yeah, we're pulling from the Dark Mirror deck today, and I have not used this deck very much, but that's what was coming up today, considering we are talking about shadow work. And
Yeah, I love it.
definitely the world around us is a mirror for what we're needing.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do we need to know for today? Message do we?
It's a beautiful deck. I love it.
Yeah,
It's very aesthetic for right now with
right?
our showing up in our all black and we're reflecting each other too in a way.
I'm wondering, like, why are there no cards coming up right now?
None of them are flying out today.
No. Hmm. There we go. Oh my gosh, this is so perfect. Of course it is. Of course it is. So the card that came out, Shannon, is Masquerade,
Ooh, that's so perfect because like
right?
how is that not so in alignment with like what we're talking about with the
Right?
shadow work?
About
Because
wearing a
that is a
mask all the
mask
time,
that you wear.
right? It is
Yeah,
100%.
totally.
And look at this card is beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so I'm going to read up on this and see what it has to say. 15, Masquerade. So this deck comes with moon phases, and it's waning gibbous, and the stage is
Mm,
bargain. Bargain. So it says, what I can't have forever, I will have for a minute. What I can't have for a minute, I will hold to me for 1 second. And it says the
mm,
visual seed is a men's space, sorry, young in the flesh and in posture, with a wide open shirt over him appears the most complicated and baroque hat, straight from a Venetian carnival. And then the sentence is, under the guise of Cupid, I will come to you. Under the guise of a thief, I will fly away. And so then it says, going dark. There is often guilt in taking the mask of Don Juan or Donna Juana. The seducer is not a master of love, neither of manipulation. He is the master of the ephemeral, of what is fleeting and brief and transient to the extreme. He is the master of the moment, and as such, he forgot all other kind of eternity. There is guilt if you care because you are not building. There is guilt out of loss because you are not treasuring. There is guilt out of indifference because when you don't care, you cheat yourself um, of meaning and value. Sometimes there is guilt in the selflessness, in the desire itself, in everything leading to pleasure, as if the only pleasure that can be sacred are only those labeled as such. The masquerade is a dance. It is a road that goes in circles and ebbs and flows and always ends with the first light. Before the time comes, hold it tightly. When the time comes, let it go. That's
mm.
pretty deep.
Yeah,
I'm like, where do
right?
we even begin with that? There's a lot
I
of like
know.
guilt coming through, that's for sure. And how much guilt do we hold within ourselves all the time that we need to bring to light, right?
Hmm. Yeah, well, sometimes there's, okay, so when we talk about the shadow work and hiding parts of ourselves and even the good parts of ourselves, there's moments, what's coming to me is like those moments where you wish you would have said something because your first instinct was to say something in that moment, but
Yeah.
because of what you say, your shadow or like that you are holding something back because you're like, oh, I really shouldn't say that's not my place, da 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 da, the
Yeah.
narratives that we have.
Yeah.
Um, we withhold, and then later on down the road, we're just like, we should have said something, like, and you ruminate, or like I was saying, you
Yeah.
overthink about it because you're just like,
Hmm.
I should have said something to them, and that would be showing up inauthentically as well. Because in the
Hmm.
moment you felt like, oh, it's not my place, or I don't want to hurt their feelings, or it's not polite to make an observation or to share how you really feel. So you kind of hold back, and like that would be one of those moments where you wear a mask, and then you feel guilty
Yeah.
later down the road that you
Yeah.
didn't say something at the time.
Absolutely.
Like we've
Feeling guilty
all
for
been
what you
there,
did or did not do, right? And then, like you
or
said, ruminating
or
on it
didn't
and stewing
stand
on
up
it.
for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Where in a moment you didn't
Yeah.
stand up for yourself in a situation, and you didn't speak up for yourself, and then
Hmm.
later on you're just like, oh, I should have said this, I should have
Yeah.
said that,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I would say that's one of those moments where you feel that guilt and that shame of withholding, right?
But isn't that about like also like about like a moment in time, like about being present? Because really there is only this moment, right? And the choice that you make
Yeah,
in this moment affects what is going to happen like in the future, or it's going to, do you know what I mean? Affect how you feel in the
absolutely.
future, and it's going to affect the outcome and whatever else. And that's why it's so important to be present in this moment and be authentic in this moment as
Hmm.
well, right? Because then you have that guilt within you. And do you really want to be carrying that around with you? Absolutely not.
Yeah. And when you're trying to do the work as well, it's those moments of awareness where you do show up authentically more often and being in the moment, you know, and giving yourself that grace because you know what? Guess what? It might be a mistake too to say something in that moment, and you might not always say the right thing or do the right thing. And I think that's
Free
what
of being
holds people
yourself.
back too from and
Yeah.
wearing that mask because it's a protection from doing something wrong or being perceived as mean or being um a bitch, whatever it is. Like, so we withhold, we put that mask on, like, I always want to seem like I'm polite and I've got it all together and da 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 da. And that's not always the case. Sometimes healing is messy and sometimes life is messy and you have to be messy
Two things that
and
came
be
up for me.
uncomfortable with it.
Yeah. Two things that came up for me when you were talking about that, of like how the world is like perceived or whatever. Like the whole thing, like when people are like, oh, be a good girl, or the
Right.
saying
The
boys
good
will be
girl
boys,
complex.
like make the triggering for me. And I'm
Right.
aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I can't even with that. And those are like two very prominent things in our society that need to be reevaluated for sure.
What is that old saying about like girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice, right?
And boys
It's
boys
like,
are made out of dirt and something, grit, and I don't even remember now, something
yeah,
like
I
that.
can't remember the boy one, but even with the
Probably
girl one, it's
butchered
like
that.
we're sweet, we're
Yeah,
sweet and
yeah,
polite all the time,
yeah.
and
And we're
every
just
like it's
supposed to
always like
comply
that
and be
narrative.
whatever. And
Yeah.
so that's the other thing, okay, with the whole
Well,
like
think about
witchy
that.
aspect
You're
and
like a
everything.
child when you hear that too, though.
Yes,
You're like a baby when they
exactly.
imprint those thoughts into your mind.
Absolutely. And but that's the whole, I think, aspect of the witch too, is that we don't comply. We do our own thing. We don't want to fit in with the world. We want to be bold. We want to be unapologetically ourselves. We want to just like change the narrative of everything.
Yeah,
And
because a
that
lot of
doesn't
us
sit
were
well
like
with
that as children.
society. I
Yeah, and
know.
it was like shoot out of you. That's not ladylike. That's not. You must be a
Yeah.
lady, act like a
Mhm.
young lady, and
Mhm.
like
And
being
women
wild
who
and free was seen
were
as not good.
of the darker aesthetic were labeled and not as witches.
Yeah. Hmm.
That would have probably been a
Yeah.
polite thing.
No, but you're so right about that. I think a
Yeah,
lot of us too are just coming to realize that we had always really been that way, and you can see it now when those
yeah,
moments when you start to shift into that different narrative and move away from your natural instinct of um being a I want to say a wild woman, like,
yes. Oh,
and even
goosebumps.
a wild
Yes,
child, right? A
yes.
wild child.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that was beautiful today. I think that was
Okay, are you going to pull a
amazing.
card?
We can. Are we
Yeah.
going over our time here?
Oh, we are way over, but I feel like this was a really good conversation that we needed to have. And there was like a lot of information that needed to be delivered to everybody who's listening.
Okay. I don't know if these cards really align. I just love what you had to say. I think
Oh, well, you know
I
what?
don't
If you're feeling like you don't want to pull a card, then that's fine. It's completely up to you
I'm
and
just
what you're
not sure. I'm
feeling.
not feeling that these cards,
Okay,
this deck is like aligning with what you pulled today, like the
that's
dark
fair.
goddess energy. Um, I'm just not feeling it right now. It's just like that nothing is sticking out to me
Okay,
in that sense with these
okay.
cards, but um yeah, I don't know. I think that we really touched on a lot today. I really
A
enjoyed
lot.
that. And I
Me
enjoyed that,
too.
like reflecting on that card definitely as well. So I got some thinking to do as well. A little bit of
Me
extra
as
work for me
well.
to do this weekend and do some reflecting because I think that was really powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. That deck of cards, and I think that's why I have refrained from using it so much, is because it is very like makes you think,
Mm,
right? And you're just like,
more like
where
a
do I
tarot deck,
even where do I even go with this? Where do I even begin? Which is kind of how shadow work is, right? Where do we even begin? Where do I go with
right?
this, right? And then you
Yeah.
just start and you start breaking it down and you start breaking it down. And then Shannon and I were like, when you can actually like talk to somebody else about it and break things down that way too, that creates a new awareness within you as well. So I love that.
Which is why we started this podcast, because we
I
feel like we
know.
wanted to share this with so many
Hmm.
other people and give them a space where they
Yes.
can come and learn a little bit and maybe even share. So if you guys are on, Spotify, or if you're on watching us on YouTube, you can leave a
Yeah.
comment down
Yes,
below
please.
of maybe some shadow work that you've done and let us know,
Hmm.
what you think about what we talked about today, or if you have any more questions for us, we'd love to like interact with you as well. But I think it's just a starting point, and it's like that sisterhood, right? So
Yeah.
this is why we want to talk about this kind of stuff and share this kind of stuff, because you do need sisterhood to get through some of these deeper, darker moments and delve a little bit deeper into yourself and have somebody there to hold space for you too at the same time. And that's what we're here for. We're here to hold space for you.
Yes, we are.
And, I appreciate you all for showing up and hanging out with us today. It was a lot of fun talking about doing shadow work. And, it's always going to be a little bit of a surprise is what we're going to talk about each podcast, I think, because that's just
And if
how
you
we
have,
roll. We just kind of roll with the punches.
I love how you were like, it was fun talking about shadow work today.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like kind of the opposite there.
But no, like I think, yeah, we need to come at it from a lighter perspective because otherwise people are just like, they don't want to go into it. Right. But if you guys
Yeah.
have anything that you want us to touch base on and talk about, like by all means, please let us know, reach out to us. Um, like I'm
You can
actually
find us
on,
on Instagram,
yeah,
social
let's,
media, like Facebook.
I was going to say, would you want to drop your Instagram handle?
Yeah, mine is Goddess Mariah on Instagram. And then you can find me on Facebook at Heart and Om, which is my Reiki business as well. So you can reach out to me there and ask me any questions. Yeah, so, Goddess Mariah, Moriah
Mm-hmm.
is how you spell that.
Yeah. And I'm Shalon underscore wild witchy goddess on Instagram. And I have Soulful Beauty or Shalon Lockhart on Facebook. So yeah, by all means, like if you have any questions or you want to let us know something you want us to talk about, please reach out to us. But this has been an amazing interaction and an amazing
Yeah.
discussion as always. Lovely and delightful. Lovely and
Lovely and
delightful.
delightful.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So
we're blessed for having you all with us today.
absolutely.
And we wish you guys all the best in your journey as well as
Mm-hmm.
you, take these next steps
And so it is.
to healing. And so it is. So beautiful.